President Joe Biden announced his administration would immediately begin to turn away Haitian, Cuban, and Nicaraguan illegal immigrants. This is an expansion of the administration's existing attempt to discourage illegal immigration from Venezuela as well. Judge, you have a lot of experience talking about this. Do you think the policies that the administration has announced this week will have any real effect on the crisis at our border?
No, they're not going to have any effect whatsoever. I mean, the fact is that Haiti and Cuba in particular are so close to the United States that mere words are not going to accomplish anything. Venezuela has been on the brink of teetering for ages. If I were living in Venezuela, I would want to get out. The problem here is the message the Biden administration has sent to the rest of the world. They've sent a clear message that the border no longer exists, it's wide open, and if you come here, you'll be allowed to stay while we figure out a way around the laws that say that you can't stay. And
right.
That's not a border policy.
What about all those piles of passports that are provided by NGOs, or they just make up where this person, they make up an entire identity? They could just change the nationality of anyone who needs to, right?
That's a massive problem. There's a huge problem with fraud before you even get the international NGOs involved. I mean, I worked on this for years when I was the head of the National Security Division at USCIS. I mean, passports are easy to forge, and so you have people from all kinds of crazy places who will masquerade as whatever they need to be to get into the United States. Where that starts to become really scary is when you're talking about foreign intelligence operatives or terrorists.
Right.
You know, it's very simple for somebody who is affiliated with ISIS to pretend to be a Venezuelan or Cuban in order to try and enter the United States. And that just demonstrates how unseriously the Biden administration is taking the larger threats that are involved with this, because the border right now is basically open to any nefarious parties, ranging from drug cartels to terrorist organizations that wish to exploit it.
Now, one of the details that the administration put out was that they're listing out the details of this new plan, and that is $30,000 a month from 4 of these countries for the next 2 years. So that's potentially about 360,000 individuals who will be allowed to come into the country from those 4 countries legally. Is that sustainable for the next 2 years? Is that going to add any burden to the immigration judicial system? Is there going to be issues there?
It's going to add a massive burden to the immigration courts. It's going to add a massive burden to USCIS. It's going to add burdens to the American communities that have to receive these people. I mean,
which, by the way, are already backlogged for several years.
I mean, we have people waiting years and years to get asylum cases heard in the immigration courts. Right. We have Abbott and DeSantis busing people to New York, and the mayor of New York complaining that he needs $1 billion from the U.S. government in order to maintain shelters. I mean, it's just insanity. And the fact is that we've already added 4 million people, the population of Ireland, to the United States under the Biden administration.
Wow.
Who are people who showed up uninvited and unvetted.
That we know of.
That we know of, exactly. They think that there may be as many as another 2 million gotaways that they have not been able to detect. And that's on top of the roughly 1 million a year people that we grant permanent status to. And this was also the year where we granted a record number of citizenships to people in the U.S. There were over 1 million people that were granted citizenship. And the fact is that while this is a big country with a lot of resources, we need to have some order to the process, or we're going to have lasting change. And this is not anything new. Thomas Jefferson talked about this in the letters to the state of Virginia, and he asked the question, if we presume that 1 million Republican Americans landing in France would change the demographics and the political complexion of that country, why wouldn't we assume that the same thing would happen if we were not careful about the people that we let into the United States?
Yes, and our founding fathers also knew that without borders, we don't have a nation.
Yes.
And that's something that we seem to have drifted away a very far distance. When we return, the CDC dives headfirst into gender propaganda, and the Dems make a mad dash to hide J6 files. Why the rush? We'll be right back. Arizona has begun to dismantle its border wall made up of shipping containers, kowtowing to pressure from the Biden administration. Ducey initially built the shipping container wall as a temporary way to stem illegal immigration. That is Governor Ducey. But he bent the knee after the Biden administration applied legal pressure, arguing Governor Ducey violated property law. Judge, illuminate us on this argument, and also Did the state of Arizona have to take these walls down?
It's not entirely clear. It's kind of a silly argument about the property law. If the government wanted to make a serious argument about this, it would have argued that immigration is a preempted federal field, and therefore the states can't take action in it. However, there's a constitutional issue, and if the government fails to protect a state from an invasion, then the state is entitled to take appropriate action. And just from a practical standpoint, this was brilliant. I mean, you take this resource of shipping containers that are easy to put in place, and they rapidly put a wall up, which was working to stem the tide of illegal immigration.
But you hit something very important, I think. This is a debate between state sovereignty and national security and the federal government. And the federal government has failed to protect the southern border. So it is incumbent upon the state to protect its own citizens.
That's correct. And in this case, the federal government has even gone a step further. It has moved in favor of foreign nationals who are not citizens of the United States and their interests over the interests of American citizens in the border states and even in the interior with everything that's been going on with this problem. So this is shocking beyond belief. I never thought I would see a situation in which the federal government was arguing on behalf of keeping the border open so that large crowds of foreign nationals could stream across it in violation of law.
There must be a reason why Joe Biden is not expected to be speaking there this weekend. He is expected to go to El Paso, Texas, and perhaps, we don't know what he's going to be saying.
He's visiting the border.
For the first time, yes.
You know what? I would honestly argue that this isn't even good for their people either. The Biden administration at this point is openly endorsing drug trafficking, rapes of women and children.
Allowing endorsing it, bankrolling it.
Bankrolling it. And you know, this is not even in the interest of their people, and they're allowing criminals to come over and harm their people. So what Trump did during his 4 years was make sure that the drug trafficking stopped, fentanyl was slowed down coming over the border, and if he had his other 4 years that he was supposed to get, that would have, I have full confidence that it would have stopped altogether. But this is really important that the Biden administration, they say they're for women, they say they're for children, they say they're for freedom, and it's quite the opposite. While Americans are dying, also they're, you know, citizens of other countries are dying as well because of this.
At this rate, we have Mexico that is virtually a failed state. It is being run by cartels. The cartels there's almost no question that the cartels have more power than the government of Mexico. So when you get to that point in a nation, you're talking about a nation that's failed. That's a failed nation. Mm. So even if we were to, there was a brief moment when President Trump talked about sending troops into Mexico to help out with this, but at this point, that would be basically not going to war with Mexico. This is going to war with the cartels, and doing that would be immensely difficult because the cartels are now taking the place of the federal government in Mexico.
Right, and we have a national security issue there too, right? I mean, people are coming over the border, and as a legal immigrant myself, who went through the process, came over here the right way, I support legal immigration. But what's been going on at the border, and how the Biden administration has been handling it or not handling it at all, is creating more of the entire world looking at us as a spectacle versus an America that's a global leader that protects their people and protects their country.
Biden administration has turned the U.S. government into the largest human trafficking and smuggling operation that the world has ever seen. And you raise a really good point. I mean, there's a major cultural issue here. You have to ask yourself, what kind of people will commit their 10 and 11-year-old daughters to alien smugglers, knowing full well that they're going to be raped on their way here? I mean,
that
if I were a
NGOs
parent,
are giving them, pregnancy pills, so-called, just to prevent pregnancies. I mean, it's a tragedy on all sides of the story. Absolutely right. And again, the Biden administration says, at first they're saying that there are more important things to talk about than the border, and now they're going to be at the border, and we will see what they deem important when they get down there at last.